Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Scott Bogman. Fellas, last week we gathered for the running back rankings and tiers. Today, we are talking wide receiver rankings and tiers. It's going to be essentially the same show we just had a week ago, but focused on the receivers this time. This is the backbone of most Dynasty rosters. It is the position that you want to be great at. It is a position that no matter what format you're in, really, it is very valuable to have wide receivers who are great, especially the guys at the top. So we're going to run through a bunch of tiers here and our rankings and kind of highlight where Fitz and Bogman might disagree, both with each other and with the expert consensus rankings that you can find at fantasypros.com/rankings. It's got all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers. You can navigate to all of the different formats there, including our Dynasty rankings as well. Guys, let's jump right in because I think it's going to be maybe a little bit of a longer episode because there's so much to talk about with wide receivers. Having said that, I don't know how much there really is to talk about in Tier 1. It's pretty straightforward. Jamar Chase is number 1. Justin Jefferson is number 2. CeeDee Lamb is number 3. I think for the most part, this is going to be the consensus across the board. However, if you look at your guys' rankings, there actually is some early disagreement. Bogman is in line with these rankings. Fitz, you have a different player inside your top 3.
Malik Nabers. Yeah, I mean, it's a close call for me, Malik Nabers versus CeeDee Lamb. Terrific players. A little bit of an age thing. Basically, I think Nabers can give us CeeDee Lamb type production, and he's, 3 years younger? So, yeah, a little bit of an edge to Nabers for me, but I don't feel strongly about it. And, maybe I should be more concerned that Nabers has yet to find his love connection at quarterback, if you will. He's going to get by with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, and the guy who I would really love to see in there to get Malik Nabers jump-started would be Jameis Winston. I don't think Winston's going to make more than a handful of starts, if that, this year. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Jackson Dart can be the guy who is the long-term partner for Malik Nabers. But I do think Malik Nabers has a really bright future based on what we saw from him last year when, again, quarterback was an issue for him.
Bogman, do you think there's a case to be made for Nabers or anybody else inside Tier 1? Or do you think that these three, Chase, Jefferson, and Lamb, really stand alone?
I mean, I honestly feel like there could be an argument made for the entire next tier in any one player. Honestly, I feel like could slip in there, but I do think that this is the way it needs to be. These are the proven talents of the very top that have done it for multiple years, even with different quarterbacks sometimes. So yeah, I think this is pretty clear, the top 3. I wouldn't have an argument for anyone else, but I can understand and I would listen to an argument for any of the other guys in the next tier to be bumping against this tier, because I do think wide receiver is fairly deep right now.
I don't think you'll find anybody in the industry who would have anybody other than Chase and Jefferson 1 and 2. If you're gonna move somebody out, it's Lamb, as evidenced by what Fitz has and just the fact that he's 3rd. But Chase and Jefferson, I think by and large, even in that order, is pretty consensus. Chase 1 and Jefferson 2. You might find some analysts out there who have Jefferson ahead of Chase, but obviously they're both pretty mega elite. Bogman, I want to ask you kind of a follow-up to a conversation Fitz and I had on the Discord show earlier this week on the trade block. We were presented with a potential trade that somebody threw out and wanted to get our opinions. I want to get your opinion. 3 firsts, a 2026 first, a 2027 first, and a 2028 first for Justin Jefferson. Now, this is like technically a best ball league. It's super flex. It is full PPR. But in general, in a dynasty league, is your next 3 first-round picks probably, you would assume, maybe coming from a contender, so maybe later in the first round? Is that worth Justin Jefferson to you?
I think it's fair. Would I say it's worth it? I don't know. Probably. I think in most cases, 3 guys for 1, specifically 3 first-rounders for 1, is going to work out. But there are many occasions where it doesn't as well. So I would say it's a fair deal. But if my team is good, I want Jefferson. I want the good player. And Fitz brought this point on one of the very first shows we've done, and it is one of the foundations that you need to remember when making a trade like this. You have to build in the waiting for these picks for your team. So your trade isn't completed until 2028, right? Like, you don't get the benefit until 2028 of this trade. Maybe your 26 pick hits and you're already as good, and now it's just icing on the cake. But maybe 26 completely flames out. Now all I have for Justin Jefferson are my 27 and 28 pick. Now they got to both be good for me to even be close to value with Justin Jefferson. So I think in most cases I want Jefferson, but I would say that is a pretty fair trade. And I think, it just depends on where your team is at. If Justin Jefferson's the only good player, go ahead and pull the trigger on something like that. But if your team is good, I'm not trading him just to get value.
The reason I like the Jefferson side in that, well, one, I would assume that Jefferson is cementing like a super team for this guy the Jefferson stakeholder is trading with. So those picks are likely, 110 through 112, probably for all three of those years. And so we're talking about low first-round picks. And Jefferson just gives you so much value over average for his roster spot. And I don't know if the value over average for those three players, unless you really just knock it out of the park on all three of those picks, is going to exceed the value over average that Jefferson gives you.
We talk about a lot, like, player values are not additive, right? You could give enough players that technically in the trade value chart, the one side's better. But the fact that all this value is coming from one individual player on your roster is more meaningful and more valuable in the long run.
Only so many starting spots.
Yeah, exactly. And what would be, I'm curious, we'll move off tier one after this because, again, there's no real debate here, especially with these top two. For one of these guys like Chase or Jefferson, Fitz, for you, as somebody who doesn't want to move off of them, obviously, what would be enough? If you were presented with a trade, and let's say you're like an average team, you're not like an obvious desperate need in rebuild, you're not an obvious contender, you're just kind of a general team, what would be enough for you to say, okay, I am now willing to move off of Ja'Marr Chase in a dynasty league?
Well, we could definitely start talking turkey if I got a quality starting quarterback back in a super flex league, because there are 5 quarterbacks who I have with higher super flex values than Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson. So, those 5 are Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. But, like Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, Stroud, those guys aren't too far off. So maybe send me one of those guys plus a draft pick. I'm willing to entertain that.
Bogman?
I mean, I think Fitz is right. I think it would have to be, like you said, it would have to be someone from the top tier of any position plus draft picks. I think that's kind of what you're looking at. So like Brock Bowers and a pick, a quarterback and a pick, Drake London and a pick. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of what it looks like if you're trading off. Because I'm not trading, and this is the real issue that I would have with a trade like Justin Jefferson for 3 first rounds, right? It's that I'm not trading an elite guy like that in most cases for something unknown. I have to get a proven commodity back and hope for something that can push the trade over the top in my value. And even if it doesn't, I already have that floor. So that's what it would take. But in most scenarios, I want to hold on to Jefferson. It's the rebuild only where I'm trading either one of the Jefferson or Chase, any top tier guy like that.
You can level up your fantasy football draft prep with FantasyPros Mock Draft Simulator. Complete realistic mock drafts in minutes without waiting between picks. Tailor your mock drafts to your league's specific settings, including roster configurations and scoring systems. Receive instant feedback and draft grades to refine your strategy and gain a competitive edge. Prepare confidently and dominate your draft with the Mock Draft Simulator at fantasypros.com/mock. All right, guys, let's get into Tier 2. This is 6 names. I already mentioned the guy at the top, Malik Nabers, because Fitz has him inside his top 3. After Nabers is Puka Nucua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas, Nico Collins, and Drake London. Now, Bogman, you said that you could see a case for anybody in Tier 2 as a Tier 1 guy. Is that something where you're making the case for they could end up there by the end of the year, or would you consider any of these guys right now in the Tier 1?
No, I wouldn't consider them right now, but I do think that they could end up at the end of the season.
Who's the most likely you think to get there?
I think it is Nabers, right? Like I think Puka we've already seen do it, so it wouldn't be shocking if Puka is there. This honestly, any of these guys. Brian Thomas had such a huge year. Now maybe Travis Hunter makes him better, right? Like there's a possibility for that. Nico loses Tank Dell and could get an absurd amount of targets, right? Like, so you can see all of these, but 170 targets last season for Malik Nabers with an improved quarterback situation, no matter who's back there. I think it is Malik Nabers. I think he's knocking on the door right now, and Fitz already has him there.
Fitz, if I remove Nabers from the equation, because you already have him there and Bogman has him atop this tier, who's the guy that you think has the best chance of being tier 1 a year from now?
Brian Thomas. Yeah, BTJ had, 87 catches, almost 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns as a rookie. Did that missing Trevor Lawrence for a while. Now there's probably going to be an overall offensive upgrade for the Jaguars with Liam Cohen coming in. And, BTJ played hurt for a while in the season. I forget exactly what the injury was. It was some sort of upper body injury, I believe, but, that was bothering him for 2 or 3 weeks at least. Seeing was believing with that guy in year 1. So it would not surprise me if he took the next step, either this year or next.
I think what is interesting about this tier and why it is the correct names to be in this tier is that I'm looking through these 6, and I wanted to kind of, as an exercise, throw 2 different trio combinations at you guys and say, hey, you're loaded in Dynasty at receiver. Would you rather have your 3 starters be these 3 or these 3 out of this tier? And I couldn't come up with a good combination that I thought would be one side or the other, because they're all really, really good. Like, any trio obviously would be, insane out of these guys. But, in consensus, it's Nabers, Nucua, St. Brown, and then Thomas, Collins, London. But I think you could make a really compelling case that might maybe even rather have the trio of Brian Thomas, Nico Collins, and Drake London ahead of that other trio. I just think there's so many directions you could take this tier that they're just all really, really good players. Like, I think Nico Collins, if he stayed healthy last year, might already be at the top of this tier and borderline tier 1 with what he was doing when he was healthy with CJ Stroud last season. Drake London, we are really excited about him with Michael Penix Jr. and just the peppering of targets we saw late last year and just the talent of London. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. had a historic rookie season. Nabers did as well. Puka's done it before.
Let me ask this, Worm, real quick. Who would drop out of this? Not that we're adding someone up to the next tier, Fitzy, and you get to go first since I made up this question. So who drops out of this tier if you have to pick one instead of one going up? Who would come down?
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
And that's because he's losing Ben Johnson and just the ever-changing landscape of the Lions coaching staff here, huh?
I mean, not just that, Boggs, but in 2023, Amon-Ra averaged 20.7 PPR fantasy points per game. Last year, he dropped to 18.6, which is still great, even losing 2.1 fantasy points a game. Still high-level production without question. But, Amon-Ra also fell off in targets. He averaged 10.3 in 2023, only 8.3 last year, and I think the emergence of Jameson Williams had a lot to do with it. And for Amon-Ra to get within 2 fantasy points per game of where he was in 2023, he needed a career-high 12 touchdowns, which was, aided by Jared Goff's career-high TD rate of 6.9%, and Amon-Ra cut 81.6% of his targets, which is just an outrageously high catch position, 9 percentage points higher than where he had been the previous 2 seasons. So, I mean, Amon-Ra had sort of juiced production and still was 2 points down from where he had been 2 seasons ago. And, if he doesn't have that same sort of high touchdown rate and doesn't have that high catch rate, maybe he slips another notch this year.
I think that, and it's such a great response, by the way. I come up with a question off the cuff, and listen to Fitz's response was incredible, by the way. Awesome. I think, to me, I think outside of Nabers, because we've already kind of talked about him ad nauseum here, I think it's Puka would be, but I think he's also the most likely outside of Nabers to move up and down. So I just think it's the injury stuff. It's the injuries from BYU. Then he comes out, rookie of the year, amazing season, and then banged up again in his second season. So if it's another injury-plagued season, I think we start to put that tag on him. You might be able to even say the same thing about Nico after missing 5 games this year.
Also,
so,
what if we get 2 years of Davante Adams in, on the Rams?
Yeah, that could.
Those are the
eat
2
into
for
Puka
me.
as well.
Puka and Amon-Ra where, again, I still really like them both, of course.
Yes,
we
of course.
all have them inside top 10, but if you're going to make the case against somebody, like Amon-Ra is the first name I'd go to, and Puka is the second. So
Puka had the highest receiving grade in the league, according to PFF. But, he's misses games. It's been in his past. And he's talking about wanting to retire at 30 and all that stuff. So there's like built-in things with Puka, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, not that I want to just blow past all the best players because they're super fun to talk about. But again, kind of similar to tier 1, this is a very clear tier 2, especially with your guys' rankings. The order is different. And obviously, like I said, Fitz has Nabers a little bit higher. But this is 4 through 9, essentially, for you guys. Nobody in this group do you have outside the top 9. Nobody below this in consensus do you have inside this group. This is very set in terms of kind of those next 6 names after that elite trio at the top. So the top 9 is pretty straightforward, and there's really not too many arguments. Any of these guys you're going to be very happy with taking. Like, they're all excellent second-round picks in a startup draft. Like, this is a very, very great group to be working from, and you should be really happy. If you have 2 of these guys, like, you are set very
Sitting
well
pretty
at the position. So I think we can move on to tier 3, where it starts to get a little more interesting. This is largely, you guys are in line with consensus. Again, a little bit different order, but this is the same group for the most part. It runs from wide receiver 10 through wide receiver 15. It's Lad McConkey, A.J. Brown, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., T. Higgins. And unlike the previous 2 tiers, this tier has a lot of different archetypes in it. You have the guy who is starting to get a little bit older in A.J. Brown. Not that he's old. He's still very, very, very good, but starting to get on the older end to the point where in Dynasty, maybe you go towards the younger guys. You also have the guys who are unproven, like Marvin Harrison Jr., who is coming off of what is generally a good season for a rookie, but definitely a disappointment relative to our expectations for year 1 from him. They are in the same tier here. We have a guy like Garrett Wilson, who's never had a good quarterback situation, but has still given you a high floor. A guy like Higgins, who's really talented, but he's number 2 in his offense and has that injury stuff as well. Jackson Smith-Njigba finally had his breakout last year. Lad McConkey, obviously a great rookie season. So, again, a lot of guys that are bringing different things to the table in this group. Fitz, I'll start with you. What player stands out to you most that you want to highlight here?
Man, T. Higgins. Let's talk about him. I'm lowest on, well, I'm only one spot below ECR and Bogman at wide receiver 16, and I might be too low on him. Just looking at the potential of this Cincinnati offense this year, especially in light of how bad the Cincinnati defense could be, and I was saying this on another show this week. Like, if I ever see a Vegas total under 50 on a Bengals game this year, like, that is such a quick auto bet for me. I don't know if we'll see one. Like, every game should be a shootout, so I'm not really worried about the presence of Jamar Chase. Like, I think there's plenty to go around, especially since it's kind of a skinny target tree in Cincinnati anyway. It's Chase, Higgins, and then
Brown.
Chase Brown. That's kind of it. A little bit of Gesicki, the occasional shot play to Josevich.
I like Josevich, but he's buried.
Yeah. So, and then if, like, anything were to ever happen to Jamar Chase, I think there have been 5 games since Chase came into the league that T. Higgins played without Jamar Chase. And in those games, he's, like, prorated over a full season. It would come out to, like, I forget what he was at, 541. I think he averaged basically 100 yards a game in those games where there was no Jamar Chase. So, a lot of upside for T. Higgins, still young. I know people don't like the fact that he's not the number 1 receiver in his own offense, and he's missed 5 games in each of the last 2 years, has had some hamstring issues, but I'm still pretty bullish on Higgins, even though I'm actually behind ECR.
Higgins is somebody that I tend to avoid in Dynasty just because there's more uncertainty with him than other guys. Having said that, there's uncertainty with a lot of players in this group, whether it's because of the quarterback situation or because we haven't seen them do it yet or any number of reasons. Bogman, when you think about T. Higgins, back end of tier 3, it aligns with your rankings. Does that feel right to you?
I'll say this for this tier, though. I have it fractured, and I kind of have this third tier just eliminated because I have the top 3 guys here in Lad, A.J. Brown, and JSN in between Nabers. So my tier goes from Nabers down to JSN, and then I split Wilson, Higgins, and Harrison into a deeper tier of the guys below them. So for me, I see Ladd, A.J. Brown, and JSN as kind of, I've already seen them do it. I've seen them prove it. I believe in them. The other three guys, Higgins is great. He's not a wide receiver 2 on his team. He's a wide receiver B. That's kind of how I would explain him more, is that, yes, he's the second option and maybe his upside is capped by Jamar Chase, but he's still really good. And then the offenses are like, Marvin Harrison just didn't show it, and he added a bunch of weight this offseason to try to get off those jams and make himself open. Is that going to work? I think that's a question. And if Justin Fields works in New York, they could be running that ball a ton, right? So he is still the number 1, but that's going to turn into a primary run-first offense, and Garrett Wilson may be capped a la Zay Flowers. You know what I mean? Like, I think Zay Flowers is awesome, but would I love him in Cincinnati over Baltimore? 100%. So, I just think that there's issues with those three guys, whereas the other three guys, like, I don't know, is Sam Darnold really going to kill JSN? I don't think so. I think he's a possession guy. So the other guys I'm not afraid of. Those guys all have little nitpicks.
I want to ask about a guy that you didn't mention there, so you're not afraid of him, Ladd McConkey, who fits as number 10, which is aligned with consensus. You have him at 11, so essentially the same spot. And you just said kind of looped into that tier ahead if you were tiering them just you individually. I don't want to say we're out over our skis on Ladd, but are we overreacting to a very strong rookie season, despite the fact that he plays in a run-heavy offense? And, he's the type of player who, like, even if he doesn't miss time, just, like, looks kind of banged up a lot when he's coming off the field.
Plays through stuff, right.
And I'm more trying to play devil's advocate than making a case that I really believe
it's a
in.
fair
But
argument.
Is it too soon for him to be in the top 11, top 10?
I think it is, and I think the rankers have shown us that it is, right? And that is why he is in that third tier where you wouldn't put him up there. I believe in him. I saw him at Georgia. I think he's outstanding, and I think adding a guy like Trey Harris, even though it is a target, I think is better for Ladd. I think his connection with Justin Herbert, because he's such a good deep threat, is going to open up more things underneath. I think Gadsden could also end up doing that for the Chargers as well. So I just think that Ladd is the number 1 for this foreseeable future for the Chargers, and I kind of think that's already locked in. So to me, same thing with JSN as well. I think he's already the number 1 and pretty locked in there now that they traded DK. So I think those guys just have a lot of value here.
Yeah, if I can chime in on Ladd, Worm, like I share some of your concerns for redraft, actually. I'm much more into Ladd for Dynasty than for redraft because I think Ladd is just a phenomenal player. 2.59 yards per route run as a rookie. That's just amazing. And then, of course, the last look we got at Ladd McConkey last season, 197 yards in the Chargers' wildcard loss to the Texans. Like, the Texans did not have a bad defense, and they could not guard that dude in that game. It was really impressive. So the thing, though, like, Ladd was 26th in the league in targets last year. And that was with the Chargers actually being the 10th run heaviest team in the league. I would put an even money bet down that the Chargers are going to be top 5 in run heaviness this year after signing Najee Harris and drafting a Marion Hampton. Like, they want to run the crap out of the ball. They have signaled that. So do we really think Ladd is going to do any better than 26th in targets, especially with, as Boggs mentioned, they add Trey Harris. Rondé Gadsden was like this revelation in OTAs. So
I don't think that defense is going to play as good as it did last season. So
that's true. They might be more shootouts, but I mean, they did average they gave up 17 points a game, lowest in the league. So
they were so good last year.
Yeah,
it was such a big turnaround from the year before too. So.
Yeah, but Worm, I don't think we're going to see Ladd fully flower maybe until the offensive circumstances are a little different. But who knows? He might be playing under Greg Roman for quite a while.
Do you, Fitz, see? So you have Ladd 10th, and you have Marvin Harrison Jr. 11th, which is a few spots higher than Bogman. Do you see a wide gap between 10 and 11, or do you view those two players as close in your dynasty rankings?
It's close. Both of those guys have their annoying issues that they're dealing with right now. With McConkey, it's the run heaviness of the offense, and with Harrison, I just worry that it is an oil and water match with Kyler Murray. That is my concern there. Like, I'm sold on the talent. Like, I watched this guy play at Ohio State. Like, I have no doubt Marvin Harrison Jr. is really good, and I'm not really worried about the David Boston thing, Boggs, where he beefs up and turns into a professional bodybuilder.
It's definitely going to make him slower.
Could be, but
Maserati Marv, that's his nickname, right? I mean,
I still really like the player. I just don't know if I like him with Kyler Murray.
So in this tier, and we're about to move off it, but I just want to highlight that A.J. Brown is kind of the guy that Bogman is the high man on of the three of us, and that's largely because Bogman is a very win-now guy, and he's A.J. Brown's still super, super good, so the kind of age
it's
gap
also a
between him and the other
crybaby.
players.
I think he's going to cry his way out of Philly and go somewhere at the end of his career to pad his stats. I think that's what he's going to want.
Maybe.
He's really good, though, man. And if
He's
like,
really good, too.
Philly was far and away the run-heaviest team in the league last year, and if they run less, it's only going to help A.J. Brown.
Yeah. So Bogman is the high guy on Brown. Fitz, of the three of us, is the high guy on Harrison. I don't have rankings here, but I would like to kind of plant my flag that I want to be the high guy on Garrett Wilson, like paired up with his college quarterback. I'm expecting, actually, even if they are a run-heavy team in general, I'm expecting Garrett Wilson to have his best year yet and to look like a real Tier 2 dynasty wide receiver by this time next year.
Well, Fitz hates him, so talk to Fitz about him.
Fitz has him all the way down at wide receiver 15, so I don't know what he's thinking. Before I get to the next tier, I want to let everybody know about Reality Sports Online. By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. I think it sounds complicated. It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, fellas. Tier 4. This is a bigger one. I'll quickly run through the names in it, and then we'll highlight some ones that stand out. So this goes from wide receiver 16 to wide receiver 25. Travis Hunter, Tetairoa McMillan, Rashee Rice, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle. This is the group where we finally get into not only some disagreements with ECR, but some disagreements between the two of you. I believe the widest gap of a disagreement between the two of you so far through these rankings is Tet McMillan. Fitz, you've got him at wide receiver 14, so that would be up with those other names we were just talking about in tier 3. Bogman, you've got him down at wide receiver 26, so that's a pretty sizable gap. If we were going strictly based on these tiers and rankings, that would actually be neither of you have him in tier 4. Fitz would be tier 3, and Bogman would be tier 5. Again, if you're just going with the numerical of these rankings. Bogman, let me start with the negative side with you. Why are you lower on Tet?
Well, first of all, I have a tier of 13 to 26, by the way. So it's a huge tier for me. It's 13 players deep, but I do have Tet at the bottom. I just want to see him do it, right? That's really what the thing is. He has all of this opportunity to be a number one in this offense and to be a stud. So I still have him as a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2, somewhere in that range. But I have him where he could, go all the way up to the number 1 wide receiver 2 to me. So I do have him in a tier with that group. I just want to see him do it first. That's really it. Because coming into the league, like, if you ask me between Rome Odunze and Tet McMillan, I want Rome, like, easy. If you ask me between Worthy and Tet, I want Worthy, easy. So I do like T-Mac. I just don't like his skill set as much as I like some of these other guys coming into the league. So I do have him a little bit lower. But the spot is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous because everything you said about Cincy, Fitzy, right? Like, they're going to have to play shootouts. Carolina is too. They should be much improved from last year, but last year they were historically one of the worst defenses in the history of the league. They gave up more rushing yards than any defense ever. So I think they are going to be bad, and Carolina's going to have to play point for point. So that's all really good. Like, the opportunity is awesome. That's why I have him in this tier, albeit at the bottom. But I just want to see him do it first. That's all.
I am definitely closer to Fitz's ranking of wide receiver 14 for Tet McMillan. I like the player as a prospect. It sounds like better than you did, Bogman. And
Probably.
also, like, the opportunity is awesome in this offense,
It
right?
is.
Especially if Bryce Young is the guy we saw in the second half. Like, I don't see, if he is still that guy, I don't see how the opportunity isn't just going to be so good for Tet that he would have to be really below what I expect of him as a player to not take advantage of the volume.
Or
that I think
Bryce
he's
Young
gonna
is
get.
bad again.
Yeah. I'm saying if Bryce Young is what he was the second half of last year, then I don't see a way that it doesn't work. That could end up not being the case, of course. But I just don't think it's ever a bad idea.
That should get solved quickly, though. Like, even if Bryce
yeah.
Young sucks.
I just don't
that
think
should
it's a
get
bad
solved
idea
quick.
to invest in top 10 receivers and good landing spots. Like, in general, like, I'd rather be higher on those guys year in and year out than lower. In redraft leagues, it feels like the lowest you ever draft them is their rookie season. They are always more valued the next year. And I just, like, I want to be in the business of being above consensus on a guy like Tet McMillan, where he went in the draft, what his landing spot is. Fitz, you obviously have him there already.
I do. Great prospect and goes into a terrific situation. I mean, Boggs, if you want to see it first, why are you necessarily putting Rome Odunze ahead of Tet McMillan? Because we haven't really seen it from Odunze either.
I don't think we saw a fair shake from Odunze last year, though.
Fair.
because-
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily Rome's fault, but we still
And that's the point.
haven't
Like, I'm
seen
not
it.
sitting here saying that Tet McMillan is definitely going to be at the bottom. That's why I have him in this tier, right? I at the end of the season, could I move him all the way up to 13, 14, 15, where you guys have him? 100%. But I think winning now is also being a little bit cautious on the rookies, right? Like, it's a little bit cautious on these guys. These guys can pay off huge, so you do want to take the risk, of course.
No, you hate him, and the commenters will reflect that.
Yeah,
No.
and that's fine. That doesn't bother me at all. But, like, I don't know, taking him ahead of the floor of some of these guys like Smith and Waddle and Addison and even Worthy and his teammate Moore, like another guy and Moore. Like, I can't do it. So yeah, I'm gonna be low man on McMillan. for this
Fitz,
season.
not only do you have him at the top of this tier, you have Tet ahead of guys in the tier above. Garrett Wilson and T. Higgins are both lower than Tet for you on your rankings.
Yeah, and
Blasphemy.
I could second guess that one for sure. Like those three are pretty hard to parse, but I probably give the youth advantage to McMillan there.
So how about the other rookie that went inside the top 10, Travis Hunter? He's 16th in ECR. He's 17th for Fitz, 25th for Bogman. So this is another one where Bogman is lower than Fitz is. I don't even know. Like, I tend to feel like I'm the guy who's fading Hunter. I don't even know what ranking I would put on him personally. I just, like, he's one more than anybody else. I need to see it to believe it. Not to believe the talent, but just to believe what the usage is going to be. And I think I'm too cowardly to be investing in him as a top 16 Dynasty wide receiver until I see for sure how Jacksonville is actually going to use him. Bogman, you are once again the low man on him.
Yeah, and listen, this is Fitz screaming in my mind. The thing that Fitz has, the point that he has made, it's probably overblown at this point, but it still is true. Like, what if he's just better as a corner than a wideout? Would they move him, or at least play him more at corner and maybe split him up at wide receiver? So just the realm of possibilities for Travis Hunter is endless. He could be better than Brian Thomas and immediately be a wide receiver one. He could be so bad at wide receiver they need to put him at corner. Like, what I think is going to end up happening is he's probably not as good as Brian Thomas, but he's a really good wide receiver too. That's probably what we're going to see with him. But there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, Fitz. I mean, there was like a report. I forget who said it, but I saw somebody the other day was saying that some of the Jacksonville guys were talking about, like, the usage is going to be very different game to game for Hunter, like, depending on where he's more needed in terms of the matchups on defense versus offense. If I'm building out my dynasty roster, I don't want that kind of uncertainty. It's in a different way than I was talking about uncertainty with T. Higgins, but again, in a different way, but a similar type of, there is uncertainty there. I just don't want to mess with that as early as you would have to take him in a startup draft or had to draft him in rookie drafts in May. You are, more bullish here with him at wide receiver 17.
Yeah, and it makes me look like a windsock because, as Bogman said, I have been, kind of sounding this alarm about, like, are we sure that Travis Hunter is going to be a wide receiver for the long haul? And I am not so sure. So for me, actually, there is a gap between that Tetairoa McMillan, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins tier, and then I've got Travis Hunter at the top of tier 4, which is like a big 15-player tier for me that goes from like Travis Hunter to George Pickens. Because I do have that fear, but at the same time, if he does stick with wide receiver, or if he does wind up being this freak who plays a lot of wide receiver and cornerback and really is the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL, this is a guy who could potentially work his way into tier 1 at some point. So I don't want to ignore that possible outcome because that is in his range of outcomes. This guy is just a freakishly talented player. But at the same time, yeah, there is some trepidation about what the role is going to be.
And 25 to me is pointed, Worm. It's look, he has to be my first wide receiver 3 if he's on my roster. That's what it is.
If Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't take a step back, Fitz, do you think Travis Hunter can still be tier 1? Because it's going to be really hard for the same team to have 2 receivers who are both dynasty. Like Brian Thomas Jr., we're talking about could be tier 1 a year from now. You already have him top 5. So if Travis Hunter's also tier 1, that's like 2 top 5 or 6 dynasty wide receivers in the same offense. Do you see that as a actual possible outcome, or does Brian
their
Thomas
defense
Jr.
is similar to Cincy's, by the way?
Yeah, it's not a great
off.
defense, but still, like, yeah, I mean, maybe one of them could get into like a low end wide receiver 1. But as far as being like a true tier 1 wide receiver, where right now we've only got less than half a dozen guys on that tier. Yeah. I mean, like Travis Hunter could get there eventually, but he would probably need to be decoupled from Brian Thomas Jr.
Most of these other names in this tier, which, by the way, I think is a tier that's really important to get right. Like, everybody kind of knows what to expect out of those first 3 tiers. I think getting tier 4 and tier 5 right in your startup draft, in your trades this offseason, is like a real key area to really reap those benefits moving forward, or struggle if you get it wrong. A lot of the names, you guys do have them in a different order, but it's like you're pretty close to each other. The one where there's the widest gap that we haven't mentioned already is Zay Flowers. This time it's the reverse. Fitz is the guy who's a little lower. Bogman has him up at wide receiver 17. Fitz at wide receiver 24. He's wide receiver 20, so kind of splitting the difference in the consensus rankings. Fitz, I'll start with you this time as the low guy on Zay. Why do you have him down at the back end of the wide receiver 2 range as opposed to more that middle of that range where Bogman does?
Yeah, I mean, I like Zay. I think he's worth the first-round pick the Ravens spent on him in 2023. I just think the nature of – I think as long as he's on the Ravens, he is going to be volatile week to week just because of how much they like to run the ball. Derrick Henry's not going to be around for the entirety of Zay Flowers' career, but they're going to be run heavy. They are the Ravens after all. And I think there were 8 games last year where Zay had 6 or fewer targets. That's just how it goes with Baltimore.
Yeah, for me, I like Zay because of the crazy high floor that he has, and he is a free agent in 27. I would like to think that the Ravens would pay a guy like Zay and keep him around because he fits so well, but I don't think wide receivers are a complete priority, so he could end up going somewhere with a much better passing offense in a couple years as well.
My biggest knock against Zay for fantasy, and again, I love him as a real-life player. I'm very glad the Ravens drafted him in the first round the year they did. But for fantasy purposes, if I had to set the over-under on seasons in his career in Baltimore where he has double-digit receiving touchdowns, I'll set it at 1.5 just because he might have 1 year where he breaks a few long ones. I don't think he's getting 2. Like, they do not use him in that way. He needs to break long touchdowns to score. I think he can catch a lot of passes, and I think we're maybe even slightly underrating the targets and catches that he can have in his best years. But I think fantasy managers tend to also underrate the fact that the touchdowns I just don't think are ever going to come, and it's going to be really hard for him to take a step forward from where he's ranked without that red zone usage. And I just don't see it coming.
Yeah, Lamar likes throwing to the middle of the field, and when he gets close to the goal line, it seems like it's always the tight ends he's looking for.
It's the tight ends, or they want to run the ball. They do not use their receivers in that way, and if they are going to use their receivers in that way, it's likely to be Rashod Bateman, or this season maybe DeAndre Hopkins. Like Flowers,
he's going to have to grow old
on the list
with Lamar to get double-digit touchdowns there, and also stay healthy when they're both old.
Yeah. I want to let everybody know about our new jersey giveaway. We had some fun with the George Pickens Steelers jersey. We've got a new one this month. month. If you want a chance to win a signed James Cook Bills jersey for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any video, and that is it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Tier 5, guys. We've got from wide receiver 26 to wide receiver 36. And the names are Terry McLaurin, Xavier Worthy, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Emeka Egbuka, George Pickens, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, Mike Evans, Brandon Ayuk, and Jerry Jeudy. A lot more disagreement here. The later, further you get into the rankings, it's inherently going to be a little bit more disagreement because there's not as many sure things in this group. To kind of stick with the rookie theme that we had in the last year, Emeka Egbuka is somebody that you guys are pretty wide apart on. My guess is that it's just strictly based on landing spot because I know you guys both liked him as a prospect prior to the NFL draft, but I want to hear your thoughts to kind of make sure that that is correct. Fitz, you are higher on Egbuka. You got him at wide receiver 23, which is 7 spots ahead of consensus, so you're not worried about the landing spot.
No, I just feel like he's a rock-solid prospect, and he's going to, doesn't have a clear path to 100 targets in his rookie year, but I think that path is going to clear up pretty quickly. Like Evans and Chris Godwin are probably in the back half of their careers. I don't really fear Jalen McMillan as a guy who's going to steal targets from Egbuka. Just really like the player, and like Worm, for instance, I have him ranked 1 spot higher than Zay Flowers. Who would you rather have in Dynasty?
I would rather have Egbuka.
Yeah, same.
I'm with you. Bogman?
Yeah, for me, it's just how long does it take to get him going? Because I do think he's awesome. He might already be the best wide receiver there, right? Like, that is definitely within the realm of possibility. Maybe Mike Evans is old this year. Maybe this is the first year we see it. But we still have Mike Evans. We still have Chris Godwin. I'm more of a 3-year window guy, so he's more of a, low-end wide receiver 3 than a high-end wide receiver 2 to me.
So
that's all.
Let me ask you this, Bogman, because you mentioned being like a 3-year window guy, so you tend to be more on board with the older guys. I want to ask about 2 names here that are back-to-back in consensus who are both older, Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams. You guys are both lower than consensus on Davante Adams, which obviously I would imagine is driven by the age, but you are actually above consensus on Tyreek Hill despite his also age. He's only 2 years younger than Adams. So I actually think it's more like 1.5 years. But I'm curious why with one of them you kind of have your typical approach of I don't care so much about age, I want to win now, but the other one you seem to be lower on.
Yeah, I mean, I think Davante has 1 more year. Like, I think he only wants to play 1 more year. So maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's like for him and Stafford in that offense. I kind of feel like if Stafford decides this is it, I think Tay might just be like, yeah, that's it for me too. I don't want to, play with another young QB, and I'm not following Aaron Rodgers around anymore. I think I might just be done. So Tyreek has 1,000 kids to feed. He said he was going to finish at 30. I do think he's going to play longer, but also I think the aging effects of a guy like Tyreek, outside of that wrist thing that Deepak told us about that may never get better, but I do think that he just needs fewer receptions to still make an impact. That speed hasn't really gone anywhere. Are the injuries going to creep up? Yes. But I think it's like maybe 2 or 3 more seasons of Tyreek, whereas with Davante, it could be at any point. He's just done.
Fitz, you're lower than consensus on both of them, but you are higher on Tyreek than Davante, just like Bogman is.
Yeah, same thing. Just worried about the age. How much more are you going to get out of those guys?
Couple other names in this tier that you guys are very wide apart on. I want to save the biggest gap for the end of this tier. The last name in this tier, though, you also do have a big gap on, and that's Jerry Jeudy. And this one Fitz is higher. He's got him at wide receiver 29. Bogman down at wide receiver 38. Bogman's very close to consensus, just a couple spots lower. Fitz, you are well ahead of consensus by 7 spots. Why do you like Jerry Jeudy this year without our beloved Jameis Winston in Cleveland?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, so yeah, he did put up by far his best numbers last year with Jameis Winston at quarterback. He averaged better than 100 yards a game in Winston starts, but he was actually strangely good in the games started by the other Browns quarterbacks who weren't named Deshaun Watson. Like Watson was the only quarterback who Jeudy didn't work with last year. So I'm cautiously optimistic that even though the Browns quarterback situation looks pretty grotesque this year, Flacco might get a few starts, which would certainly be good for Jeudy because Flacco is such a reckless downfield thrower late in his career. But, you're not going to be as excited if he's getting starts with Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in their rookie seasons, or certainly Kenny Pickett. But I don't know. I was just so impressed by the fifth-year breakout Jeudy had, and I know that maybe we should be wary of fifth-year breakouts, but, man, over 1,200 yards, and he's just a good route runner. He's really good after the catch. So, yeah, like wide receiver 29, I feel like it isn't too aggressive, but maybe it is relative to ECR and Bogman.
Yeah, Boggs, you've got him, like I said, basically aligned with ECR, just a couple spots lower.
Yeah, I like Jerry Jeudy, right? Like, I think what we saw last year was awesome, but Jerry Jeudy is wide receiver Kyle Pitts, right? Like, he's fetch. We've been trying to make it happen, and it just hasn't happened. So, his first year over 1,000 yards, he was way better with Jameis Winston. This offense, I think this offense, it's not just Joe Flacco, and this is why I like Judkins, and we've talked a lot about Dylan Sampson here as well, right? Is where this whole offense is going to have to restructure and find a new format. They cannot pass as much as they did last season. They're not built for it. So I think what you're going to see from Cleveland is they want to aggressively run the ball early, which is just going to make most of Judy's production late when they're losing in that garbage time, which those stats count too. And Flacco's great at them, so maybe it will work, but I don't know.
All right, two more names that I want to hit on in this tier. One of them is Xavier Worthy, which you guys don't disagree with each other on, but you both have not only higher than consensus, both of you would have him in the tier above this one. You both have him ahead of Rashee Rice. Fitz just by one spot, and Bogman by a handful of spots. So, Fitz, I just want to kind of quickly hear, we talked a little bit about this on the Discord show as well, but why do you have Worthy ahead of Rashee Rice?
Yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to work with the... So... Worthy was on a 50-catch pace over his last 8 games, a 100-catch pace over his last 8 games of last season, if you count playoff games and if you exclude Week 18, where none of the starters played for Kansas City. So, yeah, in his last 8 games, 50 catches. Now, I realize that was sort of in the Rashee Rice role that was vacated when Rice got hurt early in the year, but... the idea that Rice is going to go back into that role, sure, I buy that, but it's not like Worthy is going to become the new Marquez Valdez-Scantling of this offense, who's just running wind sprints downfield and never seeing targets. Worthy is not going away in this offense, and I think it's entirely possible he's the better player than Rice, albeit a different sort of player, and might also be less of a knucklehead.
Bogman, why do you like Worthy better than Rice, besides the fact that he went to Texas?
I mean, all the stuff that Fitz you just said, and we talked about Worthy, on this channel before, and it's the finish that he had with Patrick Mahomes was great. Specifically, the Super Bowl, the last game they played together was Worthy's best. So I don't think they're going to forget that. And he's 3 years younger than Rice. He's not coming off a major injury, and he doesn't have a suspension looming over his head. So, yeah, give me Worthy over Rice all day.
Okay, last name in this tier. This is the big one. This is the largest discrepancy that YouTube have amongst the tiers that we're going to be talking about today. Fitz, you have George Pickens, wide receiver 31, which is actually exactly the same as consensus. Bogman, you have George Pickens, wide receiver 19, so 12 spots.
Oh, that's it?
Higher.
I thought Boggs had him ranked ahead of Jamar Chase.
No, not yet.
Look, I'm sure he only needs to see a couple good games in Dallas, and he'll bump him up there. Let me quickly, I want to get Fitz's take first because he's in line with consensus, so I assume it'll be just kind of quick and align with what everybody else is thinking. Then I want you to dive in, Bogman. So Fitz, why do you have Pickens exactly in line with consensus, wide receiver 31?
Yeah, I mean, he is a complicated player to try to tackle because we know his on-field behavior can be erratic at times. He also makes some of the craziest contested catches you'll ever see. So it's a real mixed bag with him, but I actually like the change of venue for him where he doesn't have to be the lead receiver. Maybe gets a little less defensive attention, gets some matchups against lesser cornerbacks. And, Dak Prescott is one of the better pure passers in the NFL. So he's definitely getting a quarterback upgrade going to Dallas. So I'm tentatively bullish on Pickens, but then again, he is a mercurial fellow, and there's no guarantee he doesn't go off the rails for something or other at some point.
I think it's Danny Heifetz at the Ringer who says that if the field were like 5 feet wider, or it might even be like a foot wider on either end of the sidelines, that Pickens would be the best wide receiver in football because he makes so many of those crazy catches where he's just out of bounds by like 6 inches. Those are obviously a really fun draw when you have him on your fantasy team to see these great circus catches getting you fantasy points. Bogman, wide receiver 19, obviously very high. This would put him in the range based on consensus with guys like Rashee Rice, Tet McMillan, Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, well ahead of where he is right now. What's going into? Let me clear the paint and let you go to work. What's going into this ranking for you?
Okay, well, look, I think there's a lot going on here. Number one, I think the problems that George Pickens are attitude problems. They're not off the field arrest me issues, right? So yeah, I think those things can get straightened out. So I do think maturity is an enormous issue for him, but I think it can get better, specifically on a team where he knows now I'm not the number one wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best players in the league. So I don't think it's very arguable for him. So he needs to calm down about all that stuff. But we haven't seen him with a fair shake. It's been Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and the ghost of Russell Wilson as George Pickens' number one quarterback here. These are awful options, and Arthur Smith offenses, and he was the number one target there. Like, I just think in a pass-heavy offense with a guy like CeeDee Lamb on the other side getting coverage rolled to him is going to afford George Pickens so many opportunities, and I think the talent is there. He's top 20 in like everything. He's top 5 in ADOT. He's top 20 in yards per route run. He's top like 25 in yak. Like, he's good with the ball in his hands. If you're moving to a pass-heavy offense, I think it could be so much like T. Higgins with Jamar Chase in Dallas. I think the talent's there. It's putting it all together, but I do think it'll come together for him eventually because I do still think he's a net positive, and I still despise the trade that sent him to Dallas.
Fitz, is Bogman swaying you at all?
No, I mean, I think he's a mixed bag kind of player. So you can see the upside easy, but you can see the downside easy. Absolutely.
So that makes the floor, the bottom could drop out. So
correct.
I understand having him ranked a little bit lower. I just don't think it will.
Final tier that we're going to be talking about here. It's a big one, so get ready. I'm going to read through all the names just so I've said them and people can know the tiers. But if you want to follow along more closely and not forget all the names that I'm about to read, you can, again, find those at fantasypros.com/rankings. We'll just highlight a couple of them in our conversation. But the names are, and this is wide receiver 37 to wide receiver 53, so a very large tier. Luther Burden, Chris Godwin, Ricky Pearsall, Jayden Reed, Josh Downs, Khalil Shakir, Cortland Sutton, Matthew Golden, Michael Pittman, Jaden Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Trey Harris, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, Keon Coleman, Jacoby Myers, and Jalen McMillan. So we're not going to talk about every single name in detail, obviously, because we don't want to be here for 3 hours. One name that I do want to ask you guys about, and you both have various connections given his college and now his NFL team, is Matthew Golden. And he is somebody that I didn't really target very aggressively in rookie drafts. He wasn't my favorite receiver in this draft. However, this is a first-round receiver who is paired with what I think is a good quarterback in the NFL. And it's an offense that I think is going to throw more this year than last year, assuming Jordan Love is actually healthy again. So I wonder if ECR is 44 for him. You guys are both higher. Like, I feel like ECR 44 is way too low for him in Dynasty, just given those two simple facts. First round wide receiver in the draft paired with a good quarterback. Like, that seems to be enough that to me he should be inside the top 40 at least. You guys both have him in the 30s. Fitz, he's on your Packers. What goes into this ranking for you?
So, yeah, I'm ahead of ECR. I think ECR sometimes lags a bit on some of the non-first round. He was one of the first-round receivers, but maybe the guys who aren't the top talents at wide receiver, in this case, the non-Tetairoa McMillan, Travis Hunter class. So, like, it's a mixed bag for me on Golden, and just we've talked about this a lot in the fact that the film guys, the evaluators like Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler and Mel Kiper Jr. like loved Matthew Golden and all had him as a top 15 overall prospect in this draft. But the production profile, kind of scary. And guys who had the sorts of production profile that Golden had, where he was like not even a 1-year wonder, almost like a half-year wonder, at Texas. And granted, he had some great games down the stretch, and some of them against really good defenses like the Georgia game. So, I mean, I can see the cases on both sides. It's just like I know the guys who do modeling, and, like they are sounding alarms about Matthew Golden's college production profile and just saying like the hit rates for guys who look like him coming out of college have been terrible. So that is the warning shot, I guess. And I do expect it to be kind of a mixed bag as far as like who is producing for the Packers among the pass catchers. I think it's going to be an ad hoc group where it's a different person every week. So, yeah, I'm sort of torn on Golden.
For you, Bogman, he's up at wide receiver 31, which is higher than anybody else in this tier. So you are definitely buying into more of the film watcher hype rather than some of the analytical maybe fading of him.
Yeah, in this tier, you can see it. I think the only older guy that I'm above consensus on is maybe Debo. I think the rest, it's all the younger guys. So it's back to regular Dynasty ranking. Once we get down here, I'm looking for future upside, not guys that are going to pan out right now. But I do think that Golden, look, the upside is high. Like I think it's Zay Flowers, right? Like it's a run-heavy team. That's what it's going to be for a while in Green Bay. But you could get, he could be the number one pretty convincingly in Green Bay if everything pans out this year. But it could turn into what Jayden Reed is right now as well. So I think I think the floor is higher than a lot of the guys in this tier for Matthew Golden because he's a first-round pick. It's not the be-all, end-all. Like Fitz said, he's closer to the back end than the top end as a first-round pick. But he's still a first-round pick, and that means, getting afforded another opportunity if it doesn't work in Green Bay. Someone else is going to say, oh, first-round talent, look at the speed. We're going to pick him up and try him as well. So it just elongates his career, whether he's, the performer that we think he is or not. But I do think he's going to be solid. I think there's a reason they took him in the first round. I think he provides a number one target for Green Bay for a while. So, yes, I do want to roster Matthew Golden if I can.
I want to ask you guys to each pick one more name in this tier that you want to highlight. And I'm going to ask you to not pick Keon Coleman because everybody knows that you guys love Keon Coleman. I'll just say the rankings that you have now. In ECR, he's wide receiver 51. Bogman's got him wide receiver 42. Fitz has him wide receiver 35. They're both well ahead of consensus. Everybody who's listening to the show knows you guys love Keon Coleman. So besides Coleman, and this could be somebody that you are higher than consensus on or lower, whatever direction you want to take it, each pick one name that you just really kind of want to highlight and speak to before we wrap up this tier. Fitz, you can go first.
All right. Can we go back to the Packers? Let's talk about Jayden Reed for a second because I'm anxious to hear what you guys think of him. I'm sort of conflicted on Jayden Reed as well because one of the problems with Reed is he typically does not play big snap shares and typically is not on the field in two wide receiver sets, which is kind of a problem and it's sort of an obstacle to him providing big-time production. But at the same time, in the first 20 games of his career that he has played with Jordan Love, Jayden Reed has scored 13 touchdowns. Like, his rate of finding the end zone has been pretty good and, kind of disappeared down the stretch a little bit for the Packers last year, although I think in that playoff loss to the Eagles, he started to resurface a bit. I don't know what to make of him. Again, I do think that the Packers group of pass catchers is just kind of this mixed bag where it's going to be different guys coming out of the fog every week as sort of the lead guy. But I do think there are going to be some Jayden Reed games. I just don't know how to approach him as a dynasty asset.
I think I'd rather have Golden than Reed, but you have them back-to-back Fits, so I think you see that as very close to a toss-up. Reed is somebody that you are much lower than consensus on, though, Bogman, so you're kind of on the opposite end here.
I just don't think that they like him. That's the thing is I don't think that the Packers like him. I don't understand what his role is, right? Like the last 6 weeks being 60% of the snaps or lower, I think in like 4 or 5 of those last final 6 weeks of the season kind of showed to me, I don't know that they like him. Not only that, but they also drafted Golden in the first round. So is it like, okay, look, Dobbs is out. He was a whiny crybaby last year. He's done. These are our guys now. I hope that's what we get because I think that's the way it should be. And I think those are the two most talented wide receivers for the Packers. And it wouldn't shock me if they go with both those guys, give them both a full compliment, and Reed is the better guy. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world by a lot. I just don't know what is happening in Green Bay where they keep taking him off the field so much. Is he that bad of a run blocker?
They do value run blocking from their wide receivers. And, Jayden Reed is 5'11" and not even 190 pounds.
Then you got to teach him how to do it better. You can't be. I mean, it's too easy to signify. Oh, all right. Jayden Reed comes off the field. We're running the ball here. So let's go into run defense. Come on.
All right, Bogman, which of these players do you want to talk about?
I think it's Josh Downs for me. I still think Josh Downs is uber talented. They just need to find somebody to throw the ball, and there are a lot of targets there. And I know Tyler Warren is coming in to take some of those over the top, targets away from Downs. But Downs is just so good in contested situations. He's so fast. He's good with the ball in his hands. I think we need to see more from Downs, and I think those guys can complement each other. I think they have a perfect complement of wide receivers. I think this all fits very well. You have your possession guy in Pittman. You have your over-the-middle two tough guys in Warren and Downs, and you have your big hitters in Adonai Mitchell and Alec Pierce. This offense is all ready to click. They just need someone that can throw the forward pass well, which they haven't had in the last couple of seasons. So hopefully we get Richardson or Daniel Jones to work something out here because there's so much talent on this team.
Fitz, are they going to find a quarterback to take advantage of Downs' talent?
I don't know, but I do think Tyler Warren is going to put a major dent in Josh Downs' production. I would rather... he's going to get those little short throws near the line of scrimmage, and then he is going to, knock three people over. Not that the bull in a china shop approach is necessarily better than Downs make you miss approach, but people do fall in love with this shifty slot receiver archetype, I think, and so I've never had that Jamison Crowder syndrome before, so I don't like Downs as much as Boggs does, and 7 touchdowns in 31 career games. I'm just not that interested in Josh Downs, honestly.
Bad. I mean, it was Joe Flacco before it was Richardson, right? It's been bad QBs there, but I understand the slot guys usually either last a really long time like Welker or they don't. But that contested catch ability that Downs has is one of the reasons why I like him as one of those smaller slot guys.
He is a good player. I just don't know if he's ever going to be this guy who's consistently drawing 120 targets a year.
It's fair.
All right, let's have you guys pick one name each that is not inside these top 6 tiers that you think should be or just want to highlight. There's a lot of names that I think are still really interesting that are, not within that top 53 in the top 6 tiers. Guys like Jack Besh. I think Rashod Bateman is ranked too low. Cedric Tillman, Marvin Mims. There's a lot of guys that I would be pretty interested in as sort of those back-end pieces on my bench on a dynasty roster in this range. So doesn't have to be one of the guys I named. It could be anybody. Fitz, who stands out to you that's not inside the top 6 tiers?
Man, a lot of interesting potential rookies from this group. I think I definitely want to go with someone from this rookie class. You know what? Yeah, I am going to go with Kyle Williams. And I know we have been hearing maybe from Patriots beat writers that Drake May seems to really have this nice connection with Demario Douglas. So maybe the Kyle Williams takeover of the Demario Douglas role is not at all imminent. But, man, Williams is a guy I didn't really necessarily love in the pre-draft process at the beginning of it. And the more I kind of went back and watched, and he's so quick. I can't help but think that he is going to make an impact and pair pretty well with Drake May. And I like having a young receiver paired with a young quarterback because you can sort of see the future there. You don't have to guess at what the next, what things might look like after the rookie receiver's first contract. I think these guys could be together for a really long time.
Bogman?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. There are a couple I like here. I mean, first of all, I have to apologize to your boy Rashod Bateman. I feel like all I did was talk crap about him last offseason, and then he proved me wrong. So I will.
He's one of those guys that, I just think wide receiver 60 is too low. I'm not saying he's going to be, a dynasty wide receiver.
I think with Hopkins there, it's
soon,
right.
But I don't. I think
Hopkins
is kind of wide. And I think Bateman's a good player, and he's had a fully healthy offseason. They signed him to
Another
another
guy.
extension.
Get him out of Baltimore.
Yep.
Might be really good.
He needs to be
I
on a
don't know.
team that throws more.
I'm
Right.
not. I don't even know if he's gonna be inside the top 40. I just think wide receiver 60 is too low. I think he's gonna be more like he should be like wide receiver 46 or something instead.
I also think a guy that I'm like right in consensus with. I think we're I think maybe getting a little bit of overcorrection from Xavier Legette. Yes, he wasn't great in his rookie season, but he was a rookie, right? And now they're adding a deep talent like T-Mac in there. I'm not saying you need to go out and draft him. I just think that he gets buried. He gets skipped a lot. I am a wide receiver 66, but he's going closer to wide receiver, I feel like 80 or 75. Like, start throwing a deeper league at the end. Why not? He might get more open underneath with McMillan taking the deep stuff.
He's good with the ball in his hands, Boggs. Like he's dangerous, but like I don't think the dude knows how to run routes. And
He might not. They need to Debo him then.
It would concern me less if he was an early declare, had been an early declare, but he was an old prospect who didn't really pop until he was a fifth-year senior. So I'm worried, man.
He could easily be a donut. Like, he could be a nothing. But I do like throwing a dart at the end because he is good with the ball in his hands. And sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, look, we saw him for a year. Now we know what his skill set is. Now we can kind of design things around him. So maybe we get a little more of that this year.
There are a lot of dart throws I like here. And if you're making a trade, I would just try and get them thrown in as a lottery ticket. I mean, again, I already mentioned a few of them like Bateman, Cedric Tillman, like I said, Marvin Mims, Jalen Knoll. The guys you picked, rookie receivers here, Besh, A.D. Mitchell, I think is a worthwhile just lottery ticket. So a lot of names in this range that I would like to see get some opportunity and see what they do this year. We went a little long, so we'll go ahead and wrap up there. But like we said at the top, wide receiver is like just an essential part of your dynasty roster that it felt like a good episode to take a little more time with. But like I said, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thanks everybody for tuning in and listening today to our wide receiver rankings and tiers. For Bogman and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next time.